Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we are going to be sewing this skirt, which we learned the cutting in the previous video, which I'm going to be linking in the description box and also up here. So do ensure to watch that video before you watch this one, because this is basically the stitching or the putting together of this video. So let's just head into it. So I'm starting off with my center front, right? So this is my center front. So I would have actually placed this design at the middle part of it, but because I don't have enough fabric to sort of play around with like that, so that's why you see this. Well, I would have loved if these circles are really at the midpoint of the center front, if you understand what I mean. So, and this was the lining that was closest to this color that I have close to me right now. So now one thing I did was to cut the lining piece 1 inch shorter than the actual length of the skirt. So you should consider doing that so that you can have a nice finish at the hem. So I'll just match the hem side and I'll go ahead and sew. So I'm using 1/4 inch to sew, like so. Then I would bring the side fronts as well. I'm going to sew the hem of the side front. Now I'm matching right side of lining to the right side of right side, matching right side. Then I'll sew on the wrong side. Also the last hem. So it's still right side matching right side. So by the time you're done sewing the lower side, you bring all the upper sides as well. I'll match the up and sew on all the panels. I'll close the waist side as well. Remember I said I was not going to add a waistband, so that's why I need that place closed. Now when I get to the middle, remember I said I wanted to accessorize it. So before I get there to the middle of the center front, I'll just make this loop. I'm going to make this tiny little loop that I'll be adding here. It's part of the accessory, so you see you can totally omit this step. It's not compulsory. So I have this accessory here, so I'll just, you can use anything you want if you want to, but this is not even compulsory at all. So I'll just put this inwards like so, and on the midpoint of the center front, on the midpoint, I'll just go ahead and add that, and I'll continue sewing. Now I placed it in between my lining and my fabric, so on that point I'll back stitch it just to hold that nice and firmer, and I'll continue sewing. I'll do the same thing for all my panels as well. I'll continue sewing all my panels, the upper side of my side front, my center front. Now I'll make notches like so. So that by the time I flip it over, it will be easy to give it a press. I'm not cutting up to the seam line. So now on the right side, I just flipped it over to the right side, and this is the right side of the side panel as well. So I'll match right side to right side together like so. Then I'll join the fabric side to the fabric side. I'll match fabric to fabric and I'll sew like so. So using 1/4 inch sewing allowance as well, I'll go ahead and sew back stitch. Now I'll sew till I get to the point where I want that slit to be, then I'll stop. Mind you, I started that sewing from the waist. I want the slit to be around 4 inches long, 4 or 5 inches long. So when I get to about 4 or 5 inches on this material, like so, let me just make it 4 inches. When I get there, I'll stop. I'll just back stitch and stop sewing. Now I'll grab this side, the lining side as well. I'll turn it over, and then from where I was stitching that from my seam line of the main fabric is the same thing I'll do on this, the opposite side, which is the lining side. So just like the front side, like the main fabric, when I get to now, because my lining is 1 inch shorter than the main fabric, when I get to 3 inches, I'll stop. Instead of 4 inches like the other side, I'll stop at 3 inches. I'll back stitch. Now let me show you what I have. I have this side covered like so, but the slit area is still open. So what I'm going to do about the slit area now is to put my hands from this side. I'll just flip it over to the wrong side like so. Then I'll grab just the lining of this side, not the two sides, just this sewing allowance that I have here and this sewing allowance that I have here. I'll put it together and I'll just go ahead and sew from there. I'll match the point where I stopped sewing. Then I'll make sure I'm sewing just that part. Make sure you back stitch nicely and sew to the hem. Now I'll flip it back out and I'll do the same thing for this side. But meanwhile, let me show you how this side is nice. So you can see this side is nice and close. So I'll just put my hands from here, bring out this side as well. And then we sew.
So guys, this is what it looks like. You can see the accessory there, and this is one of my slits is already done. So I'm going to do the other side. You can see even the lining side is nice and clean. So I'm going to come with the other side of the panel, right, and go ahead and sew. So I'll match right side together and start sewing from the waist side, matching right side together just like I did to the other side, right? So I'll sort of hold only the Ankara side or the main fabric side and the two lining sides apart and the two Ankara parts as together, right, if you understand. So just what you see me do, I don't know how to explain the technique. So I ensure that I'll start just from the beginning of the waist or from the beginning of the Ankara, pushing my sewing allowance to the Ankara side, and I'm going to sew a very straight seam. You want to ensure that your sewing allowances are right. So I'm going to sew and stop exactly at the point where I want my slits to be. So you remember I told you I want my slits to be 4 inches long. So I'm just going to go, when I get to about 4 inches, I'll just measure to be sure that it's 4 inches, and then I'll stop there and I'll back stitch just on that 4 inches, and that will be it for this seam that I'm doing. So you can see that I'm measuring to ensure that it's 4 inches, right? So just on that point I'll stop and I'll back stitch. Now for the lining side, I'm not going to make it 4 inches because you remember I cut the lining 1 inch shorter than the main fabric. So I'm just going to flip and do the same thing for the lining side. But for the lining side, when I get to my point, I'm going to ensure that it's 3 inches so that everything aligns properly the way I want. So instead of stopping at 4 inches slit opening on the lining side, I'll make it 3 inches because from the cutting I told you that the lining is 1 inch shorter than the main fabric. Now the reason for that is so that when you turn the dress inside out, you can have a little bit of your main fabric folding inwards, so that your lining just don't start from your hem. It just don't start and it begins to reveal too much. So that's the reason why we have that. So that's basically what I'm going to be doing for my lining. So when I'm done, I just flipped it over like this, so you can see that that part of the lining, that part of the slit side is not completely closed. So what I'm going to do now is to close that side by putting my hands inwards from the side seam that is open, and I'm just going to grab the lining side, each side of the lining where I stopped sewing initially, that's the 4-inch point. I'm just going to grab the wrong side of each side and I'll sew together just like I did the first one. Basically is the same thing that I'm going to do. So that point of folding the Ankara to sort of match that 1-inch difference that we left between the lining and the Ankara, I'll just go ahead and sew that. Then I'll flip it open and you can see what it looks like. I'm just trying to poke out the nail. I'm just trying to poke out the edges, sorry, the corners of the slit. So I'll just still pull my hands back and I'll sew the other side. That's the midpoint. The mid panel. I just did the other panel, which is the side panel. So now I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing on the mid panel. I'm sorry the camera was not really showing exactly what I was doing with my hands, but you can basically just, once you're doing this, you'd really figure it out because you can just even see from what I'm doing right now. So that's just what I did. I just went ahead and I sewed it, and I also went ahead to turn it back to the right side of the fabric. So this is what it looks like. You can see everything is nice and clean. Even the slit side is nice and clean. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the back side of the blouse. I'll join the back side of the skirt. Sorry, I'll join the lining and the and the main fabric on the hem and at the waist as well. I'll turn it over to the right side. Then on the zipper line is what I'm trying to close the zipper allowance now. So I'm just going to close it, but I'm later on going to open up. I'm going to loosen the seam of where exactly where I want my zip to be, right? So but for now I'm going to close it because I want everything to be nice and even. So I'm taking my zipper allowance, and after my hip line I'm just sort of going inwards a little bit with the seam allowance to sort of give shape to the back side of the skirt. So I'm just sewing the same thing all through to my lining point, and just like I did 7 inch away, which is my zipper allowance, sorry, not 7 inches, it's about 9 inches for my zipper. I'm sort of going inwards just also on the lining piece, and so this is what it looks like now. You can see it's nice and clean as well. So I'm going to bring my front panel, right? So sorry, before I bring my front panel, I'm going to mark my dart, which is my bust span measurement. The distance from the center piece to the side piece will be 5 inches, which is my bust span measurement. So yours must not be 5 inches, yours can be 4, it can be 3.5, whatever, depending on your bust measurement. Then I'm just going to go ahead and mark my dart and go ahead and sew my dart. So the length for my dart was 5.5 inches. That was what I worked with at the back of the skirt. So I did the other side as well. Then I brought the front side and I laid it on the back side. And just, you know, the same technique of closing off the shoulder of a dress is the same thing I'm using here, matching right side to right side, right? I'm matching all panels together, then flipping one of the lining piece to the other side, and I'm going ahead to sew. So you remember I told you I had just 1 inch sewing allowance initially. Even though I marked 2 inches, I used 1 inch for the slit side. So that's just what I'm going to close. So I just closed off the skirt on this side, and when I was done doing one side of the skirt, I had to open that zipper allowance. Then I now went ahead to close the other side of the skirt just the way I closed this side. So I did the same thing, and by the time I was done, this is what it looks like. It looks really nice and clean. I love it. So you can see I told you I loosened part of the zipper side. So I'm just going to fix my zipper. Now for my zipper, I'm going to fix it only on the main fabric. So I'm opening the lining side and I'm pushing that away. So I'm fixing my zipper just on the main fabric, right? So I'm putting it on the right side of the main fabric, and I'm sort of doing this style of fixing zip. You can just go ahead and use any method of fixing zip that you want, or any type of zip. I'm using this iron teeth zip or a jean zip, depends on what it's called where you are. So that's what I'm going ahead to use. So that's basically what I'm going to be doing. So by the time I'm done, I'll show you what I did with the lining side that I pushed away. So after everything, before the lining side, this is what the back side looks like. The zip is nice on that side, but the lining is pretty open. So I'm just going to be tucking the seam allowance inwards, right? That raw seam allowance for my zipper, I'll be pushing it inwards, and I'll just lay it on the zipper side, and I'll like this to cover the zip. So I'll go ahead and hand stitch that off camera. So you can just hand stitch that, or you get hemming gum and you hem everything and give your skirt a nice press. And this is the finished look of the skirt. I love this so much, guys. So this is it about the skirt. If you enjoyed this video or you find it helpful, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, I don't know what you're waiting for. Go ahead and subscribe, guys. Don't forget to share my video with your friends. See you in my next video, guys. Bye.